You were.
Super. Can everybody hear me well enough?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
All right. All right. Well, I hereby call this meeting in order. Shall we do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yep, you should.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Thank you. Do a roll call here remotely for a few of us.
Wants to go around the room?
Yes, please. Start from my right, which would be Mr. Harry Myers.
Harry Myers present. Mayor Dan Sheets is present.
Councilor Jeannie Cuthbertson present.
Fred Cuthbertson present.
Councilor Cindy Evans present.
Councilor Brian Ray present. Cody Baker present.
Councilor Williams present.
And Councilor Felty present. Thank you, TJ, for sharing the agenda. I suppose just jump right into the 26-27 budget.
All right, y'all.
Did you find the packet online as well under the agenda center?
Yeah, Don, this is the packet right here for everybody online, or for folks, we'll come back to this packet and go into a little bit of detail on some of the LB forms. In particular, I've got a quick presentation to just help us kick off, guiding through where we are right now, what we're doing tonight, and what we'll be doing over the next couple of meetings. I may actually need to stop sharing so I can flip over to my other screen. Give me one quick moment here, please.
While you do that, TJ, I got a comment for you that you have so many tabs open on your browser, like 100.
An unbelievable number of tabs. That's just one window, Jeremy. Are there any other multi-tabbers out there? I can't be the only one here.
I don't know. It makes me feel good to see that. I'm not alone.
I can't see it when we're there in person, but here at the computer, it's a lot easier to tell. All right.
I see the red little window on my screen. Can you all see this on your screens?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. What I want to do is, again, orient us to where we are tonight. Go over a couple high-level questions, let you know a few things that have adjusted between the last meeting and today, and provide a blueprint for next steps. So just again, a review of the purpose of the budget committee process, to review the proposed 26-27 budget for this fiscal year, evaluate revenue, expenditures, and reserves, discuss the operational priorities as well as our infrastructure priorities, consider long-term financial system stability and sustainability of the organization of the city, and then, of course, ultimately to recommend the budget to the city council. Again, the budget overview, key themes that we're focusing on this year, especially coming out of the biannual budget and into the annual budget, and sort of putting things back into their places where they were before we went through that 2-year experiment with the biannual budget. Along with all of that, we have infrastructure modernization, utility system resiliency, that's a big one. Long-term reserve planning, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Capital improvement sequencing, we'll talk about that at a later date a little bit more. And maintaining our core services, that's of course a really key focus of the budget committee and of the council. So again, the Monroe City's current position, we have stable utility operations. We're working on infrastructure planning actively, good grant positioning, have good regional partnerships, and good regional coordination as well, strategically around the state. Challenges, again, as we discussed, aging infrastructure, operating flexibility is limited. We've got deferred capital needs that are going to have to be addressed. We have those rising operational costs at the same time, right? So we have to figure out how to do both of those things, and with limited staffing capacity, like many organizations are facing today. We talked last time about the important budget concepts, so I will push past this one. Again, the budget packet structure we discussed last time as well. The budget message, I wanted to touch on this one more time, especially for members of the public. Our key focus here from the budget message is that we're responding to prior audit findings, and we're doing that effectively. We're improving our financial clarity and our structure. We're transitioning back again from a biannual budget to an annual budget. We're strengthening at the same time our reserves and our fund management processes with a strong understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. And then also aligning our infrastructure planning with those priorities, with those financial planning goals. I wanted to talk a little bit here tonight before we jump into a little more detail about, again, our budget calendar and our process. We know that we've already appointed the budget officer and the budget committee formed, the budget message completed. We've had in the middle of our review meetings now. Next steps after the budget committee will be public hearings by council and ultimately budget adoption. So here's what I wanted to include tonight in terms of what's new, so that we can dive in a little bit deeper and you understand what our goals are over these meetings. So in meeting one, that was just 6 days ago, we really went over the budget itself, got you orientated to it. We went over the budget structure, what pieces are there from sort of that 50,000 foot view. We're gonna zoom in a little bit more tonight. And part of the reason we've built in some extra days on our budget calendar is to allow us time to get comfortable with all of these concepts. We know we have new folks, but also because we're, like I said, going back to an annual budget. And we'll again, what we did last time is we reviewed our expenditure overview. Revenues and overviews, expenditures. So where we are tonight. Where we want to focus in is major funds and infrastructure. So we want to dig in a little bit more on the 5 or so key funds that are really critical to bring to your attention, show on the screen, talk about what we're doing with planning and expenditures. We want to talk about reserve planning tonight, and also get a little bit more into financial sustainability discussion. So this is where we want to get some feedback from you all. What matters? What is critical? On the 8th, so this would be meeting number 3 and the final meeting for the budget committee. So this is a week from today, and I know this is crunch time, y'all. We appreciate you showing up for weekly meetings to get essentially this budget done and out the door. Next week we'll look at reviewing updates and revisions. We do expect some end of year balances and therefore beginning year balances for this particular budget to adjust after we have some reconciliations and the costs for this final year, end of the year. We'll have a public works presentation. This will be the time when the budget committee can really drill down into some of those decisions that we've made about what makes it into the budget and what doesn't for those expenditures and what that means. I've checked in with both Mark and Chuck, and they'll both be present to provide some feedback there. Final questions as well. This is the final opportunity for budget committee to ask those questions, especially things that you're not certain about. If you still have something that's open-ended and want to make sure that it makes its way to city council in case there needs to be any further scrutiny of something. That's important, right? So time to ask final questions. We want to make sure that we end up buttoning up every last little item, and then getting to a recommendation is what we'll do on June 8th. So again, the purpose of tonight's meeting, drilling down just a little bit more. We'll talk about major revenue sources, our operating costs in those major funds. We'll talk about utility system obligations, go over infrastructure needs, reserve requirements, and then finally just some long-term financial pressures that I think it's important for us to think about and have in mind. Finally, this is a primarily tonight is an educational and discussion focused meeting. What happens before June 8th? So you can expect a complete year-end reconciliation review that will include a sheet of what's changed, a review of appropriations and allocations. We'll finalize beginning fund balances and make sure that that's updated and ready for you to see. The goal of these meetings between last week and this week in particular are to get our heads wrapped around how much money it costs to run the city and how much money we expect to have coming in. And making sure that those balance and that we're placing funds in the right buckets. We'll reconcile the budget next week once we have our final reconciliation numbers. We'll incorporate some committee feedback as well. So what we want to do is take questions or comments tonight and make sure that we're getting deliverables or answers to your questions. And then finally, once we have our reconciliation in place, we hope to have the budget committee workbook that was requested prepared. I will touch on that here now just briefly, as it's been challenging to get even a read-only workbook available. And part of the challenge is there are several working documents within that workbook. An additional at least 3 or 4 working documents that staff are updating regularly, either with imported numbers or new calculations. And then we also have referenced workbooks and reference sheets. And so what that does is it requires us to update a new version of that workbook each time we meet. I suspect, though, that revisioning is going to be a little bit less once we have the reconciliation numbers by next week. So I think we can have that workbook ready for you to review digitally by the next meeting. And that would, of course, include all of the dialed in numbers too. So more meaningful, I suspect. The final thing, we'll touch back on this in a minute here after this slide. Dawn, I want to ask you to provide some updates, particularly the ones that you had prepared and mentioned you wanted to show the committee. But our discussion topics that we want to end on tonight and really make sure we have answers to these. Are revenues realistically estimated? And I definitely want to make sure we have an opportunity for Dawn to talk with us, and I'll talk with you as well, about some areas where that could be challenging. Are expenditures appropriate and necessary? This is probably the most critical piece for a budget committee in terms of recommendations for council. Are reserves sufficient? Are infrastructure needs adequately addressed? Does the budget reflect our community's priorities? And finally, is the city financially positioned for a long-term sustainable budget? So those are the key pieces that I wanted to be able to touch on tonight. I'm going to stop sharing. And Dawn, did you have some things that you wanted to update the committee on based on our last discussion? Did I hear that right?
That is correct. And unfortunately, I apologize, Councilor Williams and Pelkey. I did not upload them to the website for viewing. I did include a memorandum regarding our court and the possible dissolution of the municipal court. I have the papers, and Councilor Williams and Pelkey, I will put these in the office in your boxes. So if you want to pick up these extra sheets, you can look at the entire thing. I'll just do kind of a quick overview of this. Essentially on May 27th, so last Wednesday, I had a regular court session scheduled with Judge Blake. We didn't have anybody that came to court that day. We only had one failure to appear case, and then of course that person didn't show. So I had him go over with me what the process would be if we did a dissolution of the court. He did say it would go to Benton County Municipal Court, Circuit Court, and that he does actually provide on-call services for cities like Estacada and Detroit, especially for like just code enforcement, and he could be on call and I would still have access to his calendar. So that's something else we could take into consideration with that. We would still have access to Judge Blake. It doesn't sound like he's going to be retiring anytime really soon for our conversation. So he is very willing to take that on, and he said he's also willing to have a discussion with counsel, whoever wants to have that discussion with him about any further questions you may have regarding that potential for him just to do the on-call or as-needed basis court. And then we had a counselor request kind of a screenshot or a look at what we're seeing in our Springbrook software. TJ, I don't know if that's something you can bring up on your computer right now or not, because I just have the paper I printed. But it just essentially shows us what we're looking at when we go in the system, and our budgeted numbers or year-to-date numbers, kind of how we're taking those numbers into consideration with our forecasting moving forward, and that's how we're developing these forecasting numbers through this year for both revenues and expenses. And we have a pretty good idea now, of course, because we only have 1 month left for both of those items. A few of our revenues are somewhat delayed. So realistic revenues can be forecasted to our best ability, but it may not be received until next fiscal year, and that's when we'll be recording those revenues. So they may or may not come in this year. And then I also have a updated glossary of budget terms. I just added the LGIP, which was requested, our local government investment pool bank account, the budget committee secretary and budget committee chair as well. It was kind of just an overview of what that looks like as far as the responsibilities. So the secretary is an appointed individual responsible for maintaining the official record of budget committee proceedings and ensuring documentation complies with Oregon budget law and public records requirements. But essentially, I'm just looking for somebody to kind of back me up on notes and minutes and make sure we have everything that we need to take into account. And then budget committee chair is the presiding officer of the local government's budget committee, responsible for leading the committee's deliberations as it reviews, revises, and approves the proposed budget under Oregon local budget law. Those are the only extra sheets that are not included. Otherwise, I have our updated LB forms, including the LB1 form with kind of the very big picture overview. I think the only changes, correct me if I'm wrong, TJ, really were within the general fund. Is that correct?
What's that specifically, Don?
We had a line item in our LB30. Councilor Felty is the one that actually questioned this. We had contracted IT services, copier maintenance and service twice, I think, is what it was. But one of those should have been computer supplies, and that has been corrected. And that actually did give us a little more revenue to redistribute through that fund. So other than that, I don't think there was any other major changes at this point, correct?
Those were the significant changes, correct?
Yeah, was that the one that was the addition problem?
So that one actually, was that water? There was another thing that came up. I think it's in the note.
Yeah, it was where one of the tolls was brought in twice.
Yeah, and that we did do, I think it was only just like $1 or $2 off because you still accounted for all of the lines. I do remember what you're talking about. It was one of the LB30 forms, or UB30 forms with all of the, TJ, do you remember which one that was that we updated the calculations on? Was that the water? reserve.
So I'm fairly certain that that was sewer. Wasn't it actually 609? Which one is that, Don? Is that
Storm.
Yeah, it was. For some reason, I always remember the numbers, but never the.
I know, right?
If it were just numbers, it'd be
We
great.
did double check those calculations.
It was 609, but yes, all of the accounts, all of those funds match each other in terms of the calculations for that UA LB30, and Dawn did a great job going through and just confirming that was true after the question was raised.
That sounds
The number was added 3 lines instead.
Yeah, and so what had happened, that the UB 30 form is actually, let me go one of our current ones for reference here. I can better explain it. So 601, for example, if we go to, so the first one's LB20, that's our resources. There's LB30, which is the requirements, and then at the last spreadsheet within there will be the LB30 UB form. It says requirements at the top here, but it's non-allocated, right? So what the change was, at the bottom where it says total requirements not allocated, that should be unappropriated, reserve, and each of these other totals, like total special payments, total debt service, each of those should be added at that line level. It wasn't, but it did get accounted for in the total requirements. So the calculation down there was also adjusted. It was very odd, but it was only on one of them. I went back through all of the major fund accounts, and it still the correct number, but it got put a different way, incorrect way.
It was something wrong that was like that.
Yeah, so it was just one, and we did go back through and I checked on all of our major funds, so the 6 major funds that we have for utilities and things. I did check all of those to make sure that those were correct calculations.
It was the 601, and it was line 28, 29, and 30. On the third column.
Yeah, let me go down there and look. Okay, I have it highlighted, yes. Yeah, so those, so this is on the UBLB30, the water treatment fund, under the non-allocated. And
Page
then
that
it
is
was,
done by any chance? I can search, but do you know what page or no?
so I don't know what, this was from the last time we reviewed, so.
Oh, got it. Okay, got it.
It was the one, I think, was it you, Cody, that pointed it out? I think so. So the calculations for the total requirements, he was kind of questioning how we got to that, because if you look at the total requirements not allocated line, we only have the 100,000 over here, and we were kind of looking, well, that doesn't include the total interfund transfers, but on the previous, the biennial budget, it did. So I went back and looked and made sure that we had the correct calculation there, which we didn't, but you did account for it down below under total requirements. We just kind of had some, it was prior from the last time we used this LB form, it just wasn't corrected. I did update that, and this new one should actually show that under the water fund. And I'll number these next time, that would actually be easier for everybody probably to follow where we're at.
And then, Don, what we'll do is if there are specific questions about buttoning up things from the last meeting, I want to make sure we answer those. And then when we start getting into like details about the forms, I do want to share my screen and go through them and provide a little more of an in detail like line item. And so if folks want to ask questions when we stop on a specific form, that'd be a good time to include it in our discussion.
Yep, sounds good. And it did, if you look at the updated one, as you'll see, does have the updated calculation on it as well for this new LB form. All right, I think I am done, TJ. Floor is yours.
Any other questions from committee members, or is there anything else that we didn't touch on from our last meeting that you'd like us to clarify better?
I'm good.
Okay.
I think you're good on it.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. What I want to do is I'm just going to go through each fund. Some things are fairly straightforward. Other things I want to take a moment just to hone in on. Just the first thing I want to show you is that you have on the top left corner there where it says the LB20. The LB20, as Dawn summarized last meeting and this meeting, that is our resources, our revenues, the money coming in for each fund. the next one, and they're always going to be in order, the 100. I'll come back to this in a moment. I want to give you just the Fund 100 overview of each of the sheets, and it'll just be rinse and repeat for each numbered fund. So you've got your LB20. You've got your Form LB30. This is where we're spending money. You've got some additional LB31 forms. We'll talk about those later, but those are specific items for the general fund. It's really just court. And then you have your LB, your LB30 just summarizes up with a UA LB30, which is what this is actually. This is your UA LB30. And this includes your unappropriated, essentially, is what that UA denotes. I don't know why it doesn't actually say it up here, the UA, but it does in our other naming schemas. So,
TJ,
Just so you-
Councilor Myers has a quick question.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, the LB31s, are those inclusive in the LB30s? They're just a breakout, or is it separate?
They're included in the final UA LB30. It's a separate, like, it's a sub fund of that.
Well, what I mean is, can we find all this detail as a summary line in this?
Not in the regular LB30, but the UA LB30, it will be under the total requirements as part of that
It's added back
calculation.
in there. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I want to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want to add anything to that?
No, actually, I appreciate that because it helps me understand better how we should be gearing our presentation, especially as we go through our first fund.
Okay.
Okay, so coming back up to our LB20, again, this is going to be pretty much rinse and repeat. The things that change are the dollar amounts and the names of the lines. But this LB20, what we have on hand right now, this is something that's going to change once we have our reconciliation, is the $68,192. We think there's about $2,500, it seems, in about taxes that have yet to be received. That's a fair and accurate estimate. We have our LGIP interest, which will be coming into this fund. We have no transfers in because it's our general fund. If we have transfers, typically they go out from general fund. Other resources, things where we get money. We didn't get any grants from Benton County Economic Development this particular budget cycle, nor did we request them. We're focused on our infrastructure focus right now. No TLT. On the coast where I come from, that is a huge dollar amount. We don't budget anything here because we don't have transient lodging or short-term rentals, essentially, hotels, anything like that. There is cigarette taxes. We bring in a little bit of money on cigarettes. No, again, economic development grants that we had received previously, so that's just the line that lives there. We may or may not retire that. It's okay to leave it there for now. Court fines and fees. We talked a little bit about this. This $2,500 is bundled into that roughly $5,000 that we think we make. Donations. We may receive some donations this year. We typically do from some citizens on different items. And then our franchise fees, from all of the services out there, Monroe Telephone, you have the trash services, the power, yeah. Those are where we're getting the majority of our money from. And then, of course, license fees, lien search, liquor taxes, notary fees. Is it really only $50, Don? That's not a lot of notaries.
No, I only had a handful of them this year. We really don't get a lot of requests for those.
Planning fees. This we went slightly above the 1 year total for the last biennium. If you take 40,000 and slice it in half, we're putting about 25,000 in there in terms of where we think we're going to get money from planning fees, given the increased interest in planning and circling back to some of the other projects that we've been working on and are collecting fees on. Public records. We have our state marijuana tax revenue, our revenue sharing as well from the state. And so that really includes everything except for the taxes that are to be levied, And then that line, how much we expect in taxes, is right here, about $197,000. So that's how we get the stack of money that we expect to have in the general fund before we start doing anything with it. Now, this is all of our resources, essentially. We do have some other money coming in other lines, so I won't say it's every dollar, but this is the lion's share of where we're getting our money from.
TJ, we have a question from Council Ray.
Yeah.
Well, under the franchise fees, didn't we have a franchise with this new internet company that came through?
So it's almost ready.
It's not finalized, we have no clue how
We are
much.
close.
But it also brings up another question. Has our surplus land been taken off the market?
It was never on
It
the
was
market.
never on the
It's around the
market.
market.
So,
It never made
we
it.
can't fairly represent what we don't have an updated
Right.
value for it. And so we really can't fairly represent that in the budget, we really don't know what it's gonna be worth.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, and we don't wanna misrepresent saying we're gonna get money we won't.
Yeah, thank you, Don. I want to touch on that because that's important. I looked and I saw that historically we've done that pretty consistently over the past years. That money didn't materialize. All it did is it made the budget feel more comfortable as we were passing it in prior years. What we need to do is be a little bit more realistic because even if you do sell your land, there's a few more hoops to jump through. It's not a linear path just straight to the general fund. And there's, as we know, we've talked with Planning Commission and y'all as counselors about what that means. I removed that because it was the financially prudent thing to do.
Okay with me.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So, oh, sorry. Any other questions on the resources?
No, TJ, but one thing I just now noticed on our requirements, under the personnel, I'm not sure if something got untied here. It looks like it may have only affected the GA, but our FTE total isn't on the new LB 34.
Yeah, I do see that. For whatever reason, it looks
I
like it
don't know
might have
why
gotten.
I'll
John,
double
can
check all the times.
You guys are all volunteers.
Thank you. This is, essentially, we'll see these same line items between personnel services and then materials and services. When you look at an LB form, those capital letters there, those are the big chunks that we want to look at. Personnel is the people related to that particular function in that fund. And materials and services really are the things that we have to pay for, the people outside of our organization that we have to pay to do things for us. In General Fund 100, you'll see these in every single fund. We talked about the distribution in our last meeting, how, for example, health insurance is a larger number and it's broken out into each of the funds so that each fund shares its responsibility of the staff person and all that they do each week for each of these tasks. So you see health insurance, payroll taxes, PERS retirement. You have our staffing members, and then workers' comp.
One of the things I want to point out is that audit and filing fees, the actuals were 16,000 and 17,000 for previous 2 and 3.
That's another program that we have that we split out according, probably, did we do it according to fund size, TJ, or how did we end up piecing that out?
Thanks. And let me know, Dawn, if I didn't include that as a printed out item in your workbook last meeting, and we'll get that for you on the next one. But what we did is essentially we just, for whatever reason, we just weighed all of that cost on the general fund previously. When it makes a lot more sense if you realize there's revenues and less pressures on some of the other funds. Again, a fair share distribution. So that's what we did this time around. Audit and filing fees are actually going up, I'm sorry to say. So it's somewhat evasive in looking at that, knowing that we've distributed it out into other funds too. You'll see some of those other numbers pop up, and they sadly won't be as low as $37.50. Or excuse me, that was the accounting specialist.
For audits and we
Oh, I know, it's crazy.
Yeah,
So it looks
1,800.
like, I think one thing we might, we could touch base on this together, TJ. But the one thing we didn't do, because we do have this in our worksheet, but what we didn't do is show the justification of why we put like certain percentages in these. And maybe they're all based on the size of the fund, like how much monies are in the fund, like water fund obviously is our biggest one. But we didn't put how we came to that because it was something that we didn't think to, include. But that might be helpful as well.
Don, to be fair with you, I think that would be helpful. I don't have anything to go on. So I look in prior year budgets, and there was nothing written, nothing in the record about why we distributed what to where. So
Not
when
at
I was
all.
looking at this, I really had to say, okay, I don't know what they were thinking. I have no blueprint in front of me, and no breadcrumbs to follow. So we can provide that, and I think it's the right thing to do so that people coming ahead later understand what the calculations were and the intent was. We can include that for the next meeting for sure.
Did you happen to do that on line 44 for postage as well and spread it out? Because
Yeah, so it was in our last packet. So towards the beginning of the last packet, we have kind of our fund beginning balances, and then we have our working sheet, and we have the vehicle operation and maintenance, audit filing fees, copier maintenance and service, postage and mailing, general liability and auto, online bill pay fees, and licenses and fees. That includes software. So those are the things that we kind of we broke out into these different funds and spread it out
And,
based on the size of the fund.
and did you take into account that postage is going up in July?
I buffered it. Is it going 3 cents? 4 cents? I do try, and we did 3% on everything in here for our expenses. Something's a little bit more.
Perfect. I just wanted
What's the increase? What's the increase, Counselor?
4 cents.
Out of how much are they now? They're so expensive already.
74 cents right now, so it'd be 78 with our Pitney Bowes.
Was it 78 over? Oh,
Yeah, so we have a discounted.
I think we're okay. We actually might be okay. We'll
I
take a
think we
look
have
at
a
it, Don.
button there. Yeah. Thank you though for
I
bringing it up.
figured you did, I just wanted to make.
No, I
sure
appreciate
that
it
that
because you know that world.
Right. Well, and when you look at it, you see that sharp decrease, and I'm going, that's a little.
And I will check it.
worrying,
Well,
but-
so the figure before was a biennial
With the
budget.
biennial,
So
but the
it's
one
really-
before it was 1 year and it was 1250,
Yeah.
and now it's 402, so I just.
But we
wanted to make
distributed
sure.
it differently too.
Right, right.
So it's, yeah,
So
so no, I appreciate it,
yeah, when
because
you said
I'll
that.
double check that and
Yeah.
make sure that we are good.
Yeah, I figured that's what had happened when I heard the last explanation, I just wanted.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And so that was really just the stuff that we're paying for from within the fund, but we're not done with expenditures within that fund, right? Those are just the things that we would consider general administration. This next page shows us court broken out specifically on its own. Remember, court's kind of its own animal, and that's how we're able to look at how much we're bringing in, how much we're spending, and we talked a little bit last time about how you see court clerk wages. That's Dawn essentially. She takes off her finance specialist hat and puts on her court clerk hat at a certain number of days every month. She has to be in front of the public, but also pretty regularly on a daily, weekly basis, little things here and there.
Hey,
Yeah.
real quick, TJ, sorry to go back a page, but just for briefly, line 50, oh, sorry, now it's 48, vehicle operation and maintenance. Can you just, what is that, this one, this expenditure there?
Take it away, Don.
So that's fuel costs. If we have certain equipment repair and maintenance would be more of like major things, but mainly the fuel costs, oil changes, filters, that kind of thing.
Got it. Okay.
Items that we would, it's like regular maintenance of the vehicles. Anything above and beyond that would be in our equipment repair and maintenance.
Yeah, so just, I guess, seeking clarity, this is not like the tractor, this is like the truck or trucks.
Well,
Correct.
Yeah, because equipment repair and maintenance would be the
Yeah.
tractor. So this is the fuel, although the fuel for the tractor is also included in this because they don't, that's, yeah, it's not in a very clear, so the fuel for the tractor is under this line
Mhm.
along with the trucks. But if we were to need to put new tires on the tractor, that would be equipment repairs and
Gotcha.
maintenance.
I'll just comment, I guess, $1,000 budgeted for the fiscal seems like a low number.
So it's
Oh.
the 6 funds though, so it's with Public Works, GA,
Uh-huh.
street, and then water, storm, and sewer. And so
Yeah, so
water
it's spread
is
out.
the majority of this.
Yeah, so it's just spread out, is what you're saying.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, no larger funds, water and sewer will have a majority of that cost.
cool.
Do you have
All right.
a breakdown of all of the different line items? Like cross tab, and yes, here's what is to each fund.
So actually, well, so that's what the first packet that we provided does have that.
That's what I thought, okay.
Yeah, it's towards the beginning of that, and it's, it will show the programs, and there's 7 programs total. Starting with vehicle operation and maintenance. Well, and it doesn't actually, it shows what the amount is for each fund.
Yeah, it's
But
not,
you're always in a line item of what it would entail, it's in the very back of that first packet. For each line item, I put a very brief description of what all would be included in that type of expense and or revenue.
And keep in mind, committee, we'll provide you an updated sheet of those programs and their breakdown by line item, so that you can literally track from that LB 30 for each fund the dollar amount that's listed for that line in each program. So like vehicle operations and maintenance, I don't remember the total amount off the top of my head, but $1,000 is just a piece of that. And we provided you the percentage breakdown and the dollar breakdown. We'll give you that update once we reconcile if there are changes next week. But they should be pretty solid and should be pretty much the same as what we're seeing here. So you can 99% rely on that document now. And we'll review that again, I think next week. After we've gotten through some of these more detailed stuff, we'll come back to that 50,000 foot view where we started last week. Look at the programs and see if we can tie it all together.
Yeah.
Great.
And
Okay,
just
let's
to
get going.
the total we have for that particular program is 16,500. So there's quite a bit in there.
Okay, cool.
825, I guess, 2 other funds.
So we have the clerk, I'm still thinking of Don's role in the court. We have the court. Right now, what I've done is I have budgeted with the assumption that we would likely dissolve the court after 6 months. If the council chooses not to dissolve it, we would restore it to just simply doubling these numbers. So what I did essentially is I made some conservative estimates based on what we might expect in a 6-month period of time if we were to just sort of see it to the end and close it down. That's the same for the expenses associated with the court as well.
I got a quick question on that. If we decide to go to the on-call route, how are we going to budget that?
It would be difficult to budget. It would be basically each time that Judge Blake comes down, it's $200.
Right, but we don't know how many times we're going to call him.
No, I would guess no more than once a quarter, though. Yes.
And then if we do that, on call is great and everything, but if we have a no-show, the city shouldn't have to bear that burden. So we have to figure out how we'd be able to recoup that, because, which I guess we still have that issue now, right? We still are paying him if he's coming. So I don't know how as a city we're looking at recouping that when we have the no-shows, because, that's just more burden on the city. For somebody's, being inconsiderate and not taking care of what they need to take care of. So that might be something we can talk about at a later date. Anyway.
Or what we could do is set it over to the next arraignment date that we scheduled with Judge Blake, and they'll just have to wait.
$200 for a $50 fine is not the same.
Right.
Y'all, I think one of the things that we've been thinking about is, hey, we've had a couple of one-off black swan cases, really, where, somebody has a 4 or 5 digit fine attached to some really bad thing. And I had some thoughts about that. First is the reason we appointed Mark as a code enforcement officer, so we could have a neighbor first approach. Hopefully we can resolve it before it ever gets that far. right? So we're not wanting it really to get that far. And if it does get that far, the other thing to keep in mind is what is the chance of recovery, even if the individual does show up to court, right, and they have some sort of judgment against them. If we're keeping the court open for that big, large opportunity that might be out there, is thinking a little bit more about how likely that might be, especially when we have to consider some of these other things y'all mentioned. So just some thoughts I had for you.
So that one case that we had last year, that was a very large dollar amount, just so you guys have an idea, we wrote off everything except for our actual costs involved with the attorneys and everything else. We really made no money on it whatsoever. We barely covered our costs.
Yep.
It was,
Well, even if we did recover costs, not a large amount, all the money up, leading up to it and since then, hasn't been worth it. I mean, even if we did get that one money.
I don't believe so. There's a lot of my time is spent on collections and we never get the money.
Time to put some stars in front of those.
Right? And TJ, I do have a question on this. So let's assume we don't dissolve court. Did we bundle the court clerk with the GA regular for just the accounting specialist for the payroll and taxes and all that? Are we going to not separate that out any longer? Is that?
So thanks for that, Don. My thinking was, listen, I wanted to simplify the budget this time around, and I removed it from the distribution because that's the other thing. The distribution makes sense without this extra, court piece in there that was kind of making it a little challenging. So I'd like for general fund to just cover your couple of hours, if there are any, between now and the 6 months and call it done. If we do keep the court, I would have to restore the distribution and just make a couple of changes to the formulas. Not the end of the world, but yes, you are correct.
Okay, just making sure. All right, sure. Any other questions on GA? Okay.
So then we get down to our UA LB30. This is really the not allocated piece. When you see the capital letters all bold right there, you know you're getting down to your UA LB30. Most of the stuff above, of course, is just zeroed out because what we're really focusing on is that big piece down here that talks about starting with interfund transfers. We're transferring $31,896 to the sewer fund. When we get there, you'll see that show up. Transferring $101,175 to the Public Works Fund. I want to talk about what's happening there. So in my presentation, I talked with you about rising costs and about how as our systems get older, those costs get even more expensive. And then we have to make more updates and spend more money to keep them running. That's what you're seeing here. You're seeing us essentially having to provide additional funding, particularly to the sewer fund. And also Public Works, that's not a surprise because Public Works provides service to the city, but there's nothing that brings in revenue that you would call Public Works other than maybe park fees, right? Nothing significant. What I want to point out though is that under particularly the sewer fund, and at some point in time, perhaps the water fund, you may need to look a little bit at what it means to help those stand up on their own. Right now, we're okay. And this is something that I think is important to just bring up and raise for your attention for future years. So our total interfund transfers are $133,071. We are including a $30,000 contingency, which is about $5,000 above the midpoint of our biennium. So about $5,000 more than we would for a fiscal year previously. You'll notice that we actually included pretty significant contingencies in the prior years. In fact, we just kept it at $50,000 rather than doubling it to $100,000, which struck me as interesting. But I don't feel that it needed to really be that significantly high And also because we have an unappropriated ending fund balance, which is going to cover a lot of our costs. And we did a lot better job this year, I think, than a lot of other years, looking at what our real costs are. So this, the end of the UALB 30 total requirements not allocated is a combination of those items. This right here, the total requirements, that was what we saw in the UALB 30, or excuse me, the LB 30 just above that 163,411. And everything all bundled together, court and personnel and materials and services and you name it, 376,482 for the general fund. So that's what we're going to kind of look at when we go through these funds. I want to go through the next couple of pages and hone in on a couple of details there too. And please continue with the conversation format because I think this is super helpful. Okay. So we have available cash on hand again. LGIP interest, all the same stuff you're used to seeing. Don, would you like to talk a little bit about some of the resources here?
So we have some donations that do happen on occasion. Last time around, it was just our park restroom. The facility rental fees, we base that on the number of rentals we had this previous few years, and then along with the updated fee schedule. So that's how we come up with that number. Facility support fee, that's at $3 on each bill each month. That's to go towards, like stocking these buildings here with toilet paper, paper towels in the park as well. What else we got here? Oh, sorry, facility rental fees is MCC, park rental fees in the park. Yes?
I have a question. I've been put up by several people on that $3 fee on the water bill. It was presented to the taxpayers as a janitorial fee for the library.
Oh, really?
So everybody's wondering because the city no longer is in charge of the library. I'm sorry?
So is that during a council meeting that was discussed? Because what I have in writing doesn't
Before
say
I
that.
came on.
It was a long time
It
ago.
was a long time ago.
It was when the bill came out.
I think one of the original comments on the notes and the invoices said that. But I don't,
The original invoice,
but I think,
I'm sorry, the original invoice that came out, or when it was getting ready to be put on the invoice, I don't remember which, it was before I was a city councilman. It was put to the public, that $3 fee was to pay for the janitorial service at the library.
That's interesting, because what I received from our former CA did not say that. And I think he was the one that,
Don, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to go, there should be a resolution behind this. I'd like to put a little bit of time into just researching this specifically. Can you commit to doing that before next week? And then we'll talk about it offline before we meet with the committee?
yes, sir.
I think it was for all public facilities though, including the library.
That was my understanding. I think he mentioned the library probably at that time because that was a huge cost for us. But we do have the MCC and park as well. But I will look into that, see what I can locate as far as documentation.
I also think that's where the restroom in the park came up.
It is, that is correct.
And so we had the staff there, we want to have some communication.
Right.
The added expense, because it was paper towels, a bunch of other stuff. There's an added expense that we didn't have before.
Yeah, and it's actually quite expensive to pay for, especially the park, to stock those supplies.
I'm not arguing that.
No,
I'm just saying.
I understand what
a lot
you're
of the
saying, the way it was
neighbors
presented
come up to me
versus
and
what-
said that.
Yeah,
It was presented to us that for the library,
I'll look into it and
because they
see.
lost the janitorial service and they needed to supply janitorial service for the library, and the city needed the funding for it. $3 was put on the water bill for everyone to pay for it.
Okay.
And then when the city gave back, gave the library off.
Yeah.
And it stayed on, and then, I don't know where this came from, but it was supposed to drop off of our bill, because it's coming from my neighbors, more than one neighbor.
Yeah.
4 different neighbors. It was supposed to drop off like the following month, and it never did. I don't
Thank-
know where.
Did somebody say it was supposed to drop off, just out of curiosity?
It never goes away. You
That's
always have it there.
That's what my neighbors said.
Okay.
I never saw.
Well, I will be looking
So-
into it, friends.
So committee, here's what we'll do. First off, I just want to say, Counselor Evans, thank you for bringing this up because that is your job to ask questions, and it is our job to clarify with certainty the answers to those questions. So we'll bring that forward to the budget committee, and if there's something that we need to address, and that would be a council action, we will take care of that. Thank you for letting us know about that, or at least bringing it up, because again, it might be something we need to look at. Dawn, you and I will check in tomorrow and just
I
get
couldn't have
started.
it, yeah.
I think that we already put eyes on this months ago. We talked about this particular item a few times, and I'm pretty sure I put eyes on the resolution, but I'm not certain, so I'll reserve my own recollection until we confirm.
Yeah, I know it's just before the biennial budget that it was discussed, but I will try and eyes on it as well.
If you could let me know. I didn't pursue.
Oh, you'll definitely find out, whether it's council meeting or budget, whatever, yeah, you will find out.
For all the minutes, searching.
And y'all, we went conservative on park rental fees, just so you're aware. We did increase our fees. We do hope to market it a little bit more. There's a lot of good things there, but still we want to be a little bit conservative about that. If we see a lot of extra money coming into the account, there's really no problem with that at the end of the budget year. The other way around, a little more challenging. So we decided to do it like this. Total resources, so all the money coming in for Public Works 201, 148,000 total, except taxes to be levied. Taxes to be levied, of course, is nothing because it all comes in through the general fund. And then our LD30. So Dawn, you want to touch on our costs? You know, of course, you have your personnel. You can, of course, probably just brush over that unless there's specific questions, but I'll let you take it from there.
The only personnel cost in here that's only covered within Public Works is our facilities and grounds worker, which is Ron. The rest of them are spread or distributed per the table that we had provided last time with the personnel services. And this is based on really we've kind of gotten input on the amount of time people are spending for each of these funds to kind of get a good idea of what would be a fair representation of that. Total FTE of 0.11. Audit and filing fees, once again, that ties into our working sheet. The Connex box is a storage. So what was that Connex box for again, TJ? Is that to store?
Yeah. Right, there's those big metal boxes that people like turn into houses nowadays, but they ship them and they got the two doors that open up, and Mark can put a whole bunch of stuff in a big giant metal container that ostensibly would live at the park. We would need to dial in exactly what he's doing with it and where he's putting it, but I think it's a reasonable request. He definitely has a lot of stuff laying around outside that I'd love to see go away.
My understanding was it was mainly for OSHA compliance.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's true because
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what
Sure,
I
because I told him
remember, because we had a problem of where different chemicals were stored and whatnot.
Right.
And so we needed to have that taken care of. So that was
Okay.
my
And if
understanding.
they're flammable, you need to blow up.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's reasoning there. Equipment repair and maintenance, that's another tie into the working sheet. Just a portion is going to this. General liability and auto insurance, same thing. Locates, we don't pay for locates. I believe it's the first, I want to say 1 year, 30 of them. We don't pay anything for them. They're very small cost after. I think it's like $5 per locate. So very conservative there. Office supplies, that's just if they need like pens and paper specifically for Public Works. Operating supplies, I believe that one also ties into our working sheet. Is that correct, TJ?
yes, it does.
Signs, posters, and banners, that's just a very minor cost. We, once in a while, we'll have to get a new sign on one of the streets for parking or something. Very minimal though. Tools and equipment. This is mainly from that worksheet from Mark, correct, on the Public Works request. That's how we come up with a lot of these totals.
Yes, John, let me touch on that briefly here. So you have line 29 and line 31, and draw your attention to both, and we're going to kind of reconcile those here now. So Public Works equipment essentially was funding things that, as you would imagine, would be tools and equipment that have a 1+ year useful lifespan for Public Works in particular. A couple of issues with that. One is that if they're specialized tools and equipment, a lot of times they were. They belong with the system that they're serving. So that would be sewer, water, streets. We've got a lot of that in the following funds. So we zeroed that line out. And most importantly, we want to make sure that things that are truly public works tools and equipment, rakes, shovels, hand tools, right, stuff like that, that gets appropriately accounted for. So you will notice that we bumped up tools and equipment just a little bit. And on public works equipment, really just eliminated that. It's close to coming out around the same amount, though.
Yeah, the combination, for sure. Utilities, this is specifically the way we distribute the cell phone costs for the Public Works Department. We have 2 different cell phones that our Public Works people carry. That's just the portion for the Public Works piece. Vehicle operation and maintenance, once again, very small piece going to Public Works itself, but that's the vehicle and equipment fuel, and then any oil changes, some minor things, tires, things of that nature.
Hey, Don.
Okay, I'll let you do capital outlay.
I got one.
Hold on one second. Don, got a question from online folks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just one real quick question on general liability and auto insurance.
Okay.
Does that get spread out as well across other funds?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So when I look at like the biennium budget, in general, would you say that the budget for 26, 27 is in a similar, like 50%, 60% of that $14,500 for auto insurance?
So hold on. Actually, what we can say is that that was for a 2-year period. So
No.
the 14.5 would have been about 7,250. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, it did actually go up a little bit. We actually
Okay,
know that our
that's
general
fine.
liability, but what we did is we did a little bit better job of distributing it. I want to thank you for bringing that up, actually, because think about this for a moment, y'all. If you look back on the revenues that Fund 201 brings in, that's a real heavy burden, specifically for Public Works, when really we spend a lot of our time in the vehicle focusing on streets and sewer and water. So we really reduced the amount of money that gets distributed to that fund, taking a lot of the pressure off of it. But you do see that same amount, and unfortunately, Councilor Felty, a little bit more money this year overall as a program.
No, that's great. I just want to make sure it's properly accounted for across the board. So
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because I'm noticing that, I'm even having to question some of these. With the ones that we have, the lines that we have in our program, is there a way we can mark those to very easily identify those lines within the budget for anybody reviewing this?
Yeah, absolutely. So they're the same ones that from the working sheet that you had originally put together and that we just referenced through.
I just didn't
So
know if there's a
they're-
way to mark it on the line so it's very easily identified if somebody's going to.
You mean like a comment? What do you
Yeah,
mean
like
exactly?
program or, yeah, something, or some kind of like mark or something on there that would be, let them know that that is on our program sheet and they need to reference that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is important for you to know is that that is a calculated function from the working sheet, which is what we were talking about earlier. You have a total amount and it distributes out a percentage, totaling 100% of that to each of the funds. We just reduced a lot of the pressure on 201 because, again, it's just public works. It's not streets and sewers and water work. So we just reduced the percentage allocation. And here in a few minutes, what I could do is I could bump over to our working sheet and just give you a peek again like we did last week, if that would be helpful.
I'm probably okay. I think we'll just keep going otherwise.
Yeah, no, and it's important we're bringing that up, though, especially since some of those numbers shift significantly compared to last year. But you can see that we put a lot of burden on Public Works previously, and what I'm trying to do is reduce that.
Mm-hmm.
So TJ, Counselor Evans asked if we could color code those lines or something if they are within the program.
It's a good idea. Yeah, we can do that.
We have print and color, obviously, that's fine. I know. Well, actually, I use our old decommissioned printer for color copies, so I'm cheap like that. Because we don't pay for copy over there.
We hand out boxes of color. Well, even if you color them,
Art and crafts.
you print it out in black and white. It'll have the-
I will hand highlight them. Yeah, we could.
Yeah,
Yeah, we could do that. Would that be okay with you, TJ?
I didn't catch that. Sorry.
Just kind of color code the lines, so like vehicle operations, maintenance, general liability, and auto, the ones that are part of the program. That way, they're very easily identifiable as we're going through, and people understand that those are spread throughout all the different funds, and to refer back to that working sheet.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's a great idea.
At least while we're going through this process.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will do that.
You're not using that one. You can use both.
I can do it like Counselor Evans said, I can always do grayscale as well, but it'd still be a different, it'd be noticeable. So we can do that. Okay.
By the way, well, we will be doing that. We'll show you how the distribution works. There's a few things I want to point out. So the difference between, for example, line 31 and line 37. So 31 is, we just talked about tools and equipment. These are things that are typically really less than $1,000, certainly less than $5,000, because $5,000 is the threshold for it to be considered a capital outlay. And here are the things that were being requested from Public Works that are 5,000 or more with a useful life of 3 or more years. Those are the items that are included in the wish list, and you have that list in your packet from last week. All the ones that have a 201 on that right-hand column are totaling up to that 38,000 there. Okay. In 201, we have an operating contingency of 10,000. That is largely because we know exactly what our costs generally are going to be. We've done a much better job of assuming and calculating those. Unappropriated ending fund balance of 10,000. Total requirements not allocated, of course, of 20. And our total requirements are 148.8 here. So again, we spent a lot more time allocating money to actual capital expenditures rather than just calling it contingency and finding out about them later. That was largely the goal here. Here's our requirements. These are the same usual suspects that you'll see on most of the other funds. This one is a bit more straightforward because it's just stuff like buildings, improvement, engineering was removed, HVAC was removed. It's really just straightforward. Only 7,000 total requirements there.
Yeah, right.
And then we start looking at, these are LB31s that get into the specific programs within Public Works. By the way, it's really important for y'all to know and understand, especially for your newer folks. The library used to live under 201, the Public Works Fund. And that is also where we used to bring in a little more money than we do now, which was what necessitated a redistribution of a lot of our costs this particular year. And also just a reassessment of our revenues and everything else. Building repairs, much lower, a little bit lower, a little less than half of what we had from the biennium. Electricity, significantly higher. We actually assumed a 30% increase given potential geopolitical issues and other issues with energy could be one of our bigger problems. And then janitorial supplies, repairs, really basic stuff. Our MCC security system. Total requirements is 14,000 just for the Monroe Community Center.
Just real quick, TJ.
Yep.
On that line 1, insurance. I noticed on the previous weeks, City Hall, there was also insurance, but it was 3-starred. Let's just give me the 411 on, do we have insurance for City Hall and the community center? And where
Yeah,
that
we
is.
Yeah, that's a great question. We totally have insurance for City Hall and excuse me, for the community center. That lives more appropriately under mostly general fund, as well as distributed through some of our other funds through building insurance, but not for here any longer, and it hasn't for several years.
Cool. That's all I need.
And so we got one more year before it drops off entirely. Remember the asterisks are telling us that this is yeah, perfect. Okay. Okay. This is for parks. Largely similar to what we had done in prior years. Equipment repair and maintenance. Again, we've done a better job of allocating this to other places, especially tools and equipment. Operating supplies, propane for the park host, so Ron's location. Park trails and operations, that's literally just a 1 year of the prior year and the year before that. Park grounds maintenance, we've reduced that because, of course, we do have Ron working out there with us, and also we do have some of that allocated through some of our other staff time elsewhere as well, through just 201 itself. Restroom maintenance as well is included in that.
I have a quick question on restroom maintenance. So whenever we have a stoppage issue over there, does that come out of there? Like number 7?
That's in another line.
Okay.
If that's in another line, where was that? That was 201. We counted for that.
Let me take a.
Remind me where where did that live?
Detailed
Yeah,
for Public Works, 207 or line 7.
You know what, I think what we ended up doing this year actually for a lot of those is because it was sewer related. It went under like the sewer repairs and maintenance line.
Because I know those tend to be kind of steady.
They are not cheap. Yeah, I do believe that in this current year's, or next fiscal year budget, is it TJ, we're are we raising the lid? We're doing something over there to make that easier in the future.
Oh, thank you. I'm so tired. I had forgotten about that. So our vault, that's one of the capital expenditures this year. We have that big black thing that we're going to put into the ground. Now, that's not going to solve the problem. If people still, or people are still going to put the flush wipes down there and make it a pain in the butt. But what it means is that we're going to be able to get them out of there much faster, and we won't have to call a plumber. So that's part of the reason that I think our costs are lower. I do think that is what we were looking at there.
Why are our costs lower on line item number 2 for equipment repair and maintenance under parks?
Because our equipment repair is, most of that is allocated towards other funds. Things like sewer, water, storm that have more funding, and we can justify allocating some of those costs to those funds, again, just because it's a fair share distribution. So where we can reduce the burden on the 201, that's what we're trying to do.
So Council, that's, our mower, our tractor, all that, it's just a percentage of the repair and maintenance for that. So those are used throughout all the funds,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Again, I wish I had a blueprint for why prior administration recommended the budgets that they did, but I don't. And as I look at it, I don't have a good reason to, in a lot of ways, keep it as is, especially in this case where we lost the library. I really can't justify heavy expenditures when our revenues aren't the same as what they were before.
What you've done is actually very similar to what other cities do, TJ. I was looking into it also. A lot of the cities do base it on the size of the fund. So like our water fund and sewer fund, we have the most monies within those. So it's only that most cities will base it on that for the percentage.
This is public budgeting. This is how municipalities are supposed to function.
The correct way.
Okay. Moving on to the Monroe Festival. This is zeroed out. This will go away as a fund next year when everything has 3 asterisks. Those funds now live in other places. Street Fund, 205. So Dawn, you want to talk about our resources?
Sure. Available cash on hand, which is based on the calculations we have forecasting through this year, what we've received so far, and what we anticipate still receiving this year. LGIP interest, once again, we can redistribute those amounts if we see fit, council sees fit. State highway taxes, that's our city apportionment. So ODOT basically sends us a check each month, usually between 4,000 and 7,000, kind of varies by month. But that's a very fair representation of what we can expect to get.
And that resided in another fund?
Public, so both streets and storm previously lived in public works. They were split out this last.
Yeah, that's what I'm okay.
We of course did not receive the multi-model, we don't, so we don't anticipate any type of PATH grant or SDA grant, because we're concentrating on other things. Is that correct, TJ?
That's correct. Sewer, water.
Higher level,
those are our
yeah.
focus right now.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, so total resources of 160,056. And then requirements, once again, these are none of these live specifically under 205, so these are all based on the working sheet and the percentages we've put out on there. FTE of 0.21, audit and filing fees, that's a program, dust control, 10,000. We did, what, dust control?
Yeah.
So I talked to Mark about the schedule. So, we have to do the, I can't even think of the name of the company, but the ones that put the material down on the roads. So we've been very limited these last few years on where we go with that, and it never fails. We get complaints, hey, you did this area, you didn't treat our area, or whatever. There's not around the road still. We're a small town, and it's not fully developed. So we did put a little more within there for dust control. Engineering, that would be, TJ, do you want to speak to that at all?
Yes. So engineering, we've increased this piece to $75,000 in total. Inside of 205, this is one of the areas where it's actually the lowest amount that we're allocating. So only about 10% of the total engineering allocation is going to here, mainly because we're having the engineer focus his time on water and sewer.
Okay, equipment repairs and maintenance, that's also a program based on the size of this fund. So it's a lower amount. Equipment rental, we don't usually end up using this, but just in case we do need to rent any sort of equipment, we need something there.
Would that be the street cleaner?
Sorry, what was that?
Would that be the street sweeper?
No, so that's actually within, I believe, dust control as well. Is that correct, TJ? I think
Yes, that is correct.
It out, but yeah, it's part of that. It's also part of we put that oil stuff down, and then the street sweeper is also part of dust control. General liability and auto, that is a program, so that's split based on the size of the fund. Licenses and fees, same thing, it is also a program. Operating supplies, I think that is, TJ, is that on the public works wish list, or is that, do you remember if that's one that we just kind of?
So operating supplies are going to be non-capital expenditures. That might be things like having to go out and get some paint for the striping on the road, things like that, just quick items that they need to go and purchase.
Yeah. Repairs and maintenance, that's a little bit higher item. I shouldn't say higher item. So repairs and maintenance would be more of, I think, the cold patch and things like that, TJ. And then operating supplies would be more like the paint and that sort of thing. So kind of the lower dollar items. That's my understanding. Street
Right,
signage. So most of the street signage is going to live under streets. We have a little bit in public works as well. Go ahead, TJ.
No, I was just going to say repairs and maintenance would also include having to have somebody come out and do some work on the street, whereas operating supplies would be things we're buying and doing ourselves, would be kind of the
more contracted type. Okay. Tools and equipment. This, I believe, that was not a program.
No, that was calculated based on Mark's requests.
Wish list, okay.
Remember, everything that's under $5,000 and maybe not going to have a useful life of 3 or more years is not a capital expense. So it gets added as a tool and equipment, which is why that's 6 times the size it was before. So what that tells us is that we underfunded that line, by 6 times what it should have been previously. This time we asked Mark to figure out exactly what he's going to need and allocate that money now.
We wore out everything.
Yeah, we have, so for utility streetlights, that's our power bill each month based on all the streetlights. It's actually pretty high for that portion of it. So that specific portion, we split out the power bill based on the 5 locations. So we have our wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plant, the streets, so the street lights, and then we have City Hall and MCC. So they're split up based on their specific usage, and these are in the program. They're based on what our current amount is, and that 30% added on. Vehicle operation and maintenance, that is on the working sheet and based on the fund. And then you want to speak to the capital outlay for our city street improvement?
Yeah, so these will be large improvements that we make to the city's streets. A lot of these numbers have just been, I think, randomly selected previously. I wanted to make sure that we made them realistic. It allows us to be able to make some necessary improvements, but a lot of our capital outlay funding is going to come from things like SDC fees once we get our capital improvement plan completed. So we don't want to be looking at our fund as a source for a lot of capital work for the streets. Although we will need to do it, and it will need to happen at some point, so we've included some funds.
Operating contingency of 4,000, unappropriated ending balance of 25,000, which should sufficiently cover our expenses before we start getting our city allotment coming through. We usually get that in the first month. We should be fine then. Total requirements of 160,056. And we're on to the water revenue bond.
Go ahead, Don.
So we have our 3193. We have the one payment in there, is what we anticipate having at the end of this year. And then we're going to also receive the bond user rate. And we get that into our water fund and then transfer it to the water revenue bond for exactly one payment of 3193. We have.
Sorry, how many payments do we have left on the water bond?
Is that?
This one or the other one that we're like a payment?
We're nearing both. We're nearing the end of both of them. I believe this is the one. I think I have it in our last meeting's information. I know that they're both nearing it now. We'll double check real quick.
2030, wasn't it? Yeah.
One's 2030 and then one's sooner than that, I believe. So, let's see here, Go Bond. So Go Bond is the one we anticipate having paid in 2030.
Okay.
And so this one, I think we only have, 3 or 4 more years on it? I need to look into that though again. This one's doing sooner.
4 more years is 2030.
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe that's what I'm thinking of then. Keep that happy fast. I will double check to see exactly how many payments we have left.
It seemed like one of them was
Yeah,
coming
this
up.
coming up soon, like we had a 2 or 3 ones.
Yeah, that might be what that one is. I know we're getting close to the end though.
Okay,
Um,
that's fine. Just keep
and
going.
then we have our, both our interest and our principal payment anticipated for the year. Principal payments at 10,978. Interest is 19,215. Once again, the total payment that we're going to do this year is 3193, leaving 3193 for the following year. Then we have our general obligation bond. We anticipate having 6244 or right around there. We have that payment coming out this week. And then taxes go into this specific fund to cover the payments. So we're going to get estimated taxes of 152,880. We have our principal payment of 125, and then we have our interest payment comes out 2 different times a year, once in June and then once in December. So we have those split 13,940 each. Total unappropriated is a 6244, so that will carry forward the next year. Total requirements is 159,124. Equipment reserve fund, available cash on hand 15,031. That is basically what we're going to have at the end of this year. And then this is all reserved for future expenditures. We don't have any plans for that as of yet. Building reserve fund, available cash on hand of 42,915. That's what we have in there currently, and any anticipated LGIP interest we'll be receiving by the end of this year. And then we're going to get another 12,000 about. It just really depends on the interest rate through next year, and that's really not, I can't forecast that more than what we have right now. So about 12,000. Total resources of 54,915. All reserved for future expenditures. Park reserve 402. Available cash on hand of 25,878. There's nothing coming into this fund next year as of yet. And then all of it is reserved for future expenditures. Water reserve fund 403. Available cash on hand 59,003. Transferred in from other funds. And this is the one we transfer in from the water fund. And then we have our total resources of 129,003. Water meter replacement is a big chunk of this. Then we have the remainder reserved for future expenditures. Sewer reserve 404. Available on hand is 86,705. LGIP interest is being distributed here, so about 6360 for next year. Total resources of 93,065, all reserved for future expenditures. Capital improvement reserve fund. Available cash on hand of 34,388. And then all reserved for future expenditures there as well. Water revenue bond reserve fund. This is the one we only legally actually have to have the 3193, which is our final payment, like one payment's worth. I did dig up the paperwork on this, so I did verify 3193. All we have to have in here. We do have an overage of the 24,359 in this fund. I don't know if that's something. Is that something that council is going to be discussing, TJ?
So yes, so that would require an action of council to transfer that ideally back to the general fund for appropriation and distribution at a future date, unless we need it in another fund. Well, I mean, I think we're good doing that. But yes, that would be the prudent decision to make, providing Dawn and I have both checked on this multiple times. There is nothing beyond that 3193 that we're encumbered by within this particular fund. So the recommendation from Budget Committee might be council make that change. Make that transfer, rather.
Okay.
All right. Next fund, Water System Capital Improvement Reserve, 407. We have our cash on hand of 43,305. Transferred in from other funds. This is also transferred in from Water Reserve, the Water Fund, I believe. Let me double check that. Don't want to lie.
Oh, grants here too.
Yeah, that one's another one that's transferred in from Water Reserve, or sorry, Water Fund, 601. The CIP fee, which is at $250 per bill per month. This one actually goes directly to the specific line item in this fund. There's no need for a transfer for that piece. The Water System YEP Improvement Grant that TJ got us, the $1,525. Total resources of $1,647,995. Then we have our water system improvements of $1,525, and then generator for water plant budgeted at $80, and then the remaining $42,995 reserved for future. City Events Reserve Fund, this one's going to be phasing out. We've transferred the balance from this over to GA as of this last Monroe Festival for use. So this is probably one we're going to end up retiring. We have the park SDCs. Available cash on hand of 26,925. These ones are kind of just sitting here until we get those funds unlocked. That's a master plan, TJ? That we have to have?
That's the capital improvement plan, which will spell out all of the infrastructure projects that we're gonna complete over the next 5, 10 plus years. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So these next ones are all gonna be SDC fee related. These are really just telling you 507, 508, how much money we've essentially gathered over time, available cash on hand. That's what we've brought into those accounts through SDC fees so far. Of course, that does include some LGIP interest, because what we're looking to do is add interest from LGIP to those capital expenditures in the future. That's an intelligent way to think about using that money. The same thing goes if this is sewer. Next one would be street SDC funds, same thing. You can see we've got a lot of money, and Dawn used the perfect word there. It's unlock. Like, we'll unlock those funds with the capital improvement plan that we'll complete by the end of the year, which goes with our comprehensive plan and our development code and all the other things we've talked about a lot. Here, I think we might have, yep, we have Storm still in there. That's 510. Same thing, about 77,000. What was that?
Very good chunk in the water SDC.
And then, yep, water system. I mean, we have $500,000 available in there. We'll bring in, 10,000. So what's really great about this, as put a pin in this, there's money there to be able to leverage to work with other parties in the future, whether it's developers themselves or grant funders. This money allows us to really have some leverage.
Those match grants, looking forward to getting it unlocked.
All right.
Okay, Don, I'm back to handing it over to you. We're on 601, back to our normal funds.
Yes. Available cash on hand is 358,889. We have LGIP interest coming in a little over 10,000. There's no bank processing fees. So with the bank processing fees, the former CA was under the impression that we would be getting those monies from Express Bill Pay. And Express Bill Pay is being paid directly by people paying their bills online. So that's what that originally was budgeted for, but we never ended up using it. The container deposit refund pen, same thing. It didn't make sense to have that when we have our container deposit line. And so what I'm doing is I'm doing debits and credits against that line to make sure it balances out at the end of the year. It's a lot easier to track at that level. So we're not even using that line item. Miscellaneous income. This doesn't happen very often. I'm trying to think of what our miscellaneous income has been for water. TJ, can you see anything in Springbrook that we've had recently for miscellaneous income? Or is that just kind of covered in case?
You're piquing my interest as well, to be honest with you. I think that's coming from is fees. Are there additional fees that come up? Let's dig into that, Don. Let's be certain, because I know that I know you have a calculation on it.
Because I know we have utility bill late fees within here, like already accounted for. So that's, yeah, I'll have to look into that.
Well, you have the tap fees as 0. Good, what used to be in there.
Yeah.
Which line are we taking? What are we looking at?
The water, line 16, the water hookup charges. Tap fees is 0.
Oh yeah, that's not supposed to be. I had that. Oh, I had that at 15. I thought I had that at 1500. Thank you, Don. Could you please flag that for me? I'm going to write my own note as well. I need to include that back.
Yeah, I have my little highlighter here.
18 is 0. It's basically the same thing.
18 water shut off and turn on fees. Those are actually.
Yeah, it's like when you lock it up.
Yeah, if we actually end up turning the water off, I think it's like $35 when we turn it off and 10 to reconnect. Those happen so few and far between those, so it's not really, you can't barely estimate what we'll get for those.
Could that be the miscellaneous income?
Possibly, and I'll look into that as well,
250
see exactly what we've used that line for previously.
And the tap fees, which is specifically the piece I was talking about, so that you're all aware, that's separate from system development charges. This is helpful for the budget committee to know the difference on this. SDC fees are essentially money for future development. So somebody pays SDC fees, they're paying their fair share of a future expenditure for a capital improvement. The tap fee is exactly what it says. It's the money they pay to just connect to the pipe.
Right. We have our utility bill late fees, 4,500 is what we're estimating based on this year. Utility deposits, same thing, we kind of estimated it these last few years, what we have for people having new accounts started up, and they're 125 apiece. Water bond consumption, that is based on how much water they use. So that's a separate line item that we get in. Water bond sales, that's a flat rate amount based on whether it's residential or commercial. Water consumption fee, this is the gallons, they go over that 1,000 gallons based on our current usage. Water service charges, that is our base fee. And the total resources of 680, 157. Then we have our requirements. Once again, personnel services are based off the spreadsheet that we have connecting to this, about 2.0 FTE. Audit filing fees, the program, so that's just a portion of it. We have building repairs and maintenance, but that's specifically for the water treatment plant. Chemicals, same thing. That's just for the water chemicals that we use. Computer equipment, that's if the guys need new monitors, a mouse, minor computer equipment, obviously, under that 5,000 threshold. Computer supplies, that'd be more of like a mouse or something, a smaller type computer equipment. Container deposit, that's 205 because we pay the deposits, but then we get 75 back when we return the empty barrels. So it's usually close to being zeroed out at the end of the year. Contracted plant operation fees. This one, this is
Chuck.
Jolt, right?
Yep, exactly.
So are we only doing that because he gets 1,500 right now a month? Are we just doing that for a partial year?
Yes, so we were thinking that he would be, once Mark has his full certification, he'll be dropping off a little bit. I believe, yeah, so we've got him included at 6180. We could, if budget committee felt that we wanted to keep it at the full amount and then just have extra left over later on, if that's the way it shakes out. You can choose to be a bit more conservative and fully fund it if that's what you'd like to do. And that might prevent us coming back later on if it turns out maybe Mark's a little slow on a certification or something like that. But yes, that was the thinking.
I'm getting a mix of nods and shakes. So
Okay.
that might be a discussion.
As a purchase, no, it doesn't relate.
Yeah.
We can always move it.
Exactly.
So kind of want to err on the side of caution and
Yeah, because we've been bit before.
You never know what happens. If we have more.
Yeah,
Well, you have.
And then we also have Chuck partially under line 26 as well. So
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
something- So that, what I'll do is I'll make sure that, so what you're seeing here is about 20,000, 21,000. And over
Uh-huh.
here, you see about 32. So it's about 2/3 of that total amount. But again, and again, this was a biennium actually. So this is a little more than half. To be honest, I think we're doing pretty good there now that I remember that again, that's supposed to be split in half if you're comparing year to year.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I'll double check because again, we're looking at a lot of items.
I need to refresh my memory too, TJ. I know the city of Harrisburg is one of these, and then Chuck Schultz is the other. I need to refresh my memory because it looks like we do actually have more for contracted plant operation fees under sewer. I wonder if that's Chuck and this is city of Harrisburg.
No, you know what it is? The 6180, that's the 3% assumed increase on top of the 500 per month for Chuck's one contract, I think. right? So 6,000 a year.
City of Harrisburg, that's correct. So City of Harrisburg is the one we pay $500 a month. Chuck Schultz is the one we pay $1,500 a month.
Yeah, 15. Yeah, exactly right. There, that's what we're looking at there.
All
But
right.
we'll double check and make sure.
Okay.
Gotcha. Copier maintenance and service, that's a program, so that's just a portion of it. Our dues, these are, so we have to pay, I think it's per connection each year. So these are just the dues that we pay. It's an annual amount. I don't believe there's anything else that we pay out of. I think it's just the one. And then we have education and travel. So this is Mark getting his water certifications and anybody else on the team that may start doing that.
And Dawn,
Yeah.
I will, let me do 30 on because I've got a quick note on 30. That was a capital expense that had been originally included in just the regular budget. Again, anything over $5,000 belongs as a capital expenditure allocated on the UALB 30, more appropriately as a capital outlay. So that was removed. And then electrical evaluation and repairs, we're reducing that because we did not use anywhere near that amount of money in the last biennium, even $7,000. Engineering, that's where the lion's share of the $75,000 is going. And the rest of those lines are, as you can see, equipment rental. We increased that just a little bit because we did have a little bit of pressure there. And we added $1,000 for expenses not covered elsewhere, so that if Mark really did need to go out and buy something and doesn't know where it's supposed to live, we have that ability maybe in a pinch. And then here, the same distribution of a lot of the programs that we had seen previously. Okay. For capital, the only thing that's in there is the water reservoir inspection cleaning. And that's really included as a capital outlay because anything over $5,000 is a capital expense. It's not like a thing we're buying though or anything like that. And then Fund 601 for our UALB 30, there's that $70,000 from the transfer to capital improvement that Don was talking about, the $70,000 to the water reserve fund, and then that 30,193 capturing the total 170,193 in interfund transfers. We looked at all those earlier. And then tying it up with total requirements of 680,000. So as you can see, that's by far our biggest operating fund outside of the general fund itself. And by operating costs are significantly higher. Dawn, thank you for letting me carry that one through to the end. Go ahead and pick it back up.
No problem. So, storm, available cash on hand, we have 118,055. LGIP interest, a lot less, about 1,080. Stormwater service charges, this is our base fee, I believe it's $7 per month. And then utility bill late fees, once again, a very small portion, it's based on the amount of money that they have overdue in that specific fund. Total resources of $147,979. We have our personnel services, once again split out, full or FTE of 0.53. Audit and filing fees, that's based on the program amount and tied directly to the working sheet. Contracted services, this isn't, I don't believe this is actually accounted for anywhere. That's if we do have to hire some out for something, correct, TJ?
Correct.
Yeah. Copier maintenance and service, this is part of the program. Expenses not covered elsewhere, that's just to account for anything that we may not be able to see right now that could come up. General liability and auto, that is tied to the working sheet. Licenses and fees, same thing. That is on the working sheet as a program. We have our online bill pay fees. So these are split only between the utility funds. So we have our storm, water, and sewer, because those are the only ones that we're using express bill pay for those online bill pay fees. Operating supplies, that's going to be fund specific, anything that we may need throughout the year. Now postage and mailing, correct me if I'm wrong, TJ, but did we decide not to allocate anything to Storm on that?
Correct. So there wasn't an allocation. Can you double check and make sure? I believe
Yeah, I'm
that
going
that-
to.
But that was, I believe that I made that change with postage and mailing, but just double check
Because
and
it's
make
so
sure.
small,
that
maybe. Okay, I will double check on that. Let me take a note here. Question mark. Okay. Refunds, which we don't refund out of this account. Storm repairs and maintenance, 5,000.
That question over here, Councilor Evans.
This happened to my neighbor recently. When someone has a leak, a water leak, and their bill gets extremely high, the city does work with them if they can prove it's a leak, correct?
That is correct. And so I believe I know what neighbor you're speaking of. There's only been one recently. What I do is I make sure they haven't had any adjustments in the past 12 months for our call for a price. I believe the ordinance itself states that. Then we have to, this person submitted an actual formal request saying, hey, can you please review this? I know that X, Y, Z happened and it caused a leak and it's been corrected. And we also have a work order and I have the guys go out and check the usage to make sure that has gone back down to normal usage, make sure it is actually repaired or corrected. So that's a part of the process. And then I will produce a letter with the adjusted amount, because I can go in the system and see what it would have cost them for X amount of gallons. I use the average of 3 months based around the time of year it was for last year to get a good gauge of what they typically use this time of year. And then use those gallons to plug into Springbrook and get the new bill, and then I adjust it accordingly for what they would have had to pay versus what they now have to pay. Write a letter, include it with the bill, and explain the correction.
And then where does the funds that the city gives, where does it?
It depends on how it was billed. And so the usage itself is primarily going to be under water and the water bond. But it gets adjusted as billed. So like the original bill amount it would have been versus what the corrected bill is. And I have to adjust each of those lines from the system.
We're on this.
Well, it's an adjustment, and so it won't show, basically it ends up being like, I adjusted off, so it was never billed. We don't expect to get those funds
You won't
anymore.
see it, you won't see it.
Yeah, so it won't show on there. So a refund would be so the refunds really only happen under, like when somebody moves out and they refund their deposit. That's usually what happens.
I was just wondering if there's something.
Yeah, the way we adjusted the system doesn't really,
Cost, and so it doesn't come out of.
yeah, no.
Okay.
No, good question though. Slough clearing, I don't know if that's an annual thing. I believe it is, correct, TJ?
I'll touch on that real quick. So yes, we need to clear out the slough every single year. That's a requirement. That's part of our permit through DEQ to discharge out into the river. We also need to do our TMDL projects, so that's $2,000 we've allocated. We actually increased that significantly. 1 year was roughly $1,500 per year for the prior biennium. We've increased that by $500 because we've also committed to some more TMDL projects as part of getting up to date on that TMDL report. We had to say, listen, we know we weren't doing things. We know there's things we have to start doing also on top of that. And so we budgeted for that. Stormwater connections as well. You have that's going to be about $5,250. We've went we've gone higher on that because we expect to see more of that in this coming year, significantly higher. Vehicle operations and maintenance, a little bit higher than we saw last year, but again, still a fair share distribution from other funds. It just happened to be about the same amount as what they put in there from the prior year. And then engineering, you're seeing that pop up again, about 5%-ish of the total 75,000. Total being 104,617. gonna take storm fund, or no, we're at the end of storm fund. That's right. This is where we had operating contingency of 25, a reserve of 8362, unappropriated ending fund balance of 10,000, and total requirements not allocated of 43.3. And so a total requirements of 147,979 total. And then 104 of that is actually material services programs that are getting billed. The rest of it is contingency getting rolled over into the next year. Sewer fund 610. Go ahead, Donna.
We have our available cash on hand at 214,052. LGIP interest 10.5. Transferred in from other funds, and this is the amount that's being transferred over from GA, the 31,402. We have miscellaneous income of $100, and that's just a buffer if we do receive miscellaneous income for that fund. Permit fees, 500. Sewer consumption charges of 12,000, and that's based directly off of what we've been receiving throughout this year. The best forecast we could do. Sewer hookup charges, 2,500. Late fees of 800. Service charges of 157, and that is our base fee for sewer. Total resources of 428, 854. We have our personnel with total FTE of 1.98. Audit and filing fees, which is part of the program. Building repairs and maintenance, specifically for sewer plant, just anything that may come up that we need, like if we need, well, that would be a generator. What would that cover, you know, TJ?
Which one exactly, Don?
That might be building repairs and maintenance for the sewer. I can't think of what that would encompass.
So that would include anything at the water treatment plant that could need some repairs and maintenance. It could include people coming out and fixing a motor. It could have something to do with the pump as well.
Okay. Then we have computer equipment, 1,200. Computer supplies, 200. Once again, the computer equipment's more of like the actual computer related items. Supplies is like mice, keyboards, things like that.
I have a quick question. Is the software, and I know I wanted to ask it on one of the earlier funds, is the software under licensing fees?
That is correct, yes. Yeah. And that's one of those programs, so it is spread throughout the funds. Container deposit, $1,000. And that ideally would be close to zeroed out at the end of the year. It just depends on when we return the barrels of chlorine and whatnot versus when we get them, so. Contracted plant operation fees, this is Chuck's amount, the 20,000. The other one was Harrisburg. Contracted services for anything else that we may need, the 5,150. Copier maintenance and service, this is a part of the program. Dues or locates, 206. Education and travel of 1,200. Once again, if anything the public works needs to get certified on, their study materials, the testing itself, all of that we covered. Engineering of 7,500, so 10%. Equipment repair and maintenance. This would be probably more any of the actual moving parts that need something done. Equipment rental. I don't know what would they be renting for?
Yeah, so if they need to rent, let's say they need to rent a piece of equipment. If it's for the water treatment plant, it's got to get billed to the water treatment plant. It's for the sewer fund, it gets billed to the sewer fund, right? And so this is making sure we allocate enough money for if we need to rent something to do something at the water or the sewer treatment plant, for example.
There's no way of knowing, yeah. So we might. Oh, gross. Expenses not covered elsewhere, 8,500. So we have a buffer there as well that we could use to cover whatever we may not have enough for elsewhere.
Are there any rules of what we can use that for?
Expenses not covered elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, obviously to that fund, but.
I mean, the fund itself, ideally within materials and services, otherwise we have to do a little bit different transfer resolution at the end of the year.
But if it's contract services or materials, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Anything that we go over on it, or it's not basically not covered by the line item itself, that should be fine.
We could use it for overtime for our own person.
I mean, yes, but it's not ideal.
You'd have to do a transfer.
Yeah, the way it works is you want to, under the same type of expense or materials and services versus personnel. That's what we're doing right now with that budget tie-in from last, or the budget recon from last year.
Yeah.
We're trying to get what we can from that specific type of expense to cover. General liability and auto, 6730, that's part of the program. Licenses and fees, same thing, that's percentage of the total. Office equipment and repair, and maintenance, 100. Office supplies, 300. Online bill pay fees, 155. And that's once again express bill pay. The fees involved with that, we have to do we pay a monthly amount for them. Operating supplies of 1750. Outside testing, 4,000, so that's all of our labs that we do out of house. Then we have permit fees, 2582. Postage and mailing, 402. Production chemicals, the 7,700. The costs have gone up for that a little bit, but not significantly yet. Repairs and maintenance for the system, 8,000, which we feel is a fair representation of what we'll use. Tools and equipment, 1,500. Utilities, electricity for the lift station specifically is 12,000 a year. Utilities, telephone, internet, so this is once again the cell phone piece that's distributed specifically to the sewer type calls. Vehicle operation and maintenance, that's on the program, 8775. Total materials and services, 134,885. We have our equipment, so this would be under the capital outlay piece, so anything over 5,000 for useful life of 3 or more. Sampler and scrubbers are on here of 2,600. And then, so our total organizational expenses, 333,860. Then we have our non-allocated. We have our contingency of 50,000, unappropriated of 44,994. Total non-allocated 94,994. And then total requirements of 428,854.
That is the total of the budget. We wanted to make sure that we gave you a breakdown of each line and what we're doing and why we're doing it. The reason we started with the last meeting, high level, was so that you understood the distribution in particular. And Harry, I think I saw you might have had a question there.
I do. The last sewer fund, 610. Line 54 is for 13,213. Line 56 is for 20,600. And then you have total capital outlay of only 13,213. Should be 33,000.
You're absolutely right.
Where are you?
He's in our requirements, so LB 30 form of the 610 fund, and line 57. It should be that combination of equipment and sampler and scrubbers for the total capital outlay. We'll have to ensure that calculation is correct.
33,860.
Thank you for that, Harry.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We have a question.
Yes.
So the line 24, you got the contracted plant operation, operation. Now it says within the contracted services, you said that one's for shop, 5,000.
Are we looking at sewer? The 20,000 is, our camera was 20,000. So Chuck gets paid 1,500 a month. So he's the contracted plant operation fees. Contracted services or anything outside other than Chuck that we may need to come in and do anything at the sewer plant that we can't fully anticipate.
On water treatment fund, then, the requirements, the 15,000 is for who?
Let me look. the 6,000 some odd was for the city of Harrisburg. The other, yeah, back here. Added on it. The 15,000 is just for anything else that may come up that we need to have somebody like a specialty person come in and do anything out there that we cannot handle in-house. And that might be a little on the higher end, but we want to make sure we have enough as well.
Hey, Dawn,
Yes.
on 610 sewer fund requirements summary, line 27. Yep, right there. Dues locates. Is that
That's part of our
intentional?
locate as well, so that's if
Okay.
somebody calls that, is it 811? Not 411. 811, and they need to get a locate done. We pay
Yep.
over a certain number. This is probably realistically more than what we need even. We have hardly paid anything this year, because like I said, we get the first 1 year 30 for free, and they're like $5 a piece after
Gotcha.
that.
Okay. Generally, I don't have any immediate questions. Other than that question.
Well, we did remove those, the ones that had the 3 asterisks.
Yeah.
We did
Yep.
remove those.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
We did really clean up a lot of the lines we just did not need.
I'd say
So.
just fine tuning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We wanted to
definitely.
give you an overall picture of what it looked like before we did any of the cleanup, just so you had an idea of what we were working with. And we will make sure that these formulas and the working sheet tie-ins are clear, correct. We will get all the projects highlighted, so next time we go through it, it's very clear as to which ones are part of the project. And you can very easily flip and see, okay, this percentage and, you know, this is, and if we do need to, we can, I know I did it for licenses, and fees, because there's just a lot more of them, like the software and stuff, but if you need a better breakout, we get the line items, but if you need me to include on the project piece or a separate sheet that's easier to access, I can do that for the project pieces as well, what all ties into those.
So and the other thing is keep in mind, folks, is that in this next budget that we provide to you, some of our beginning balances will change, and so you'll see some changes, especially on like the UA LB 30 forms for each of the funds. But the goal today was for you to understand how much we're bringing in and how much we're going to spend throughout the year, because those numbers aren't going to change at all, regardless of what happens with the rest of this fiscal year that we're in now. So if there are additional questions or things, I really, really appreciate y'all taking your eagle eye view of this budget and helping us see things that we need to dial in. It's a lot of work and you can get tunnel vision, so thank you. We'll make sure that those things you raised tonight are addressed. I want to just come over to here really quick because, oh, see, I thought this was going to show up on the screen and it would look perfect. Oh, here we go. Some questions for y'all. And I don't know if you need to or if you have all of the answers to these tonight. If you have questions or answers rather to these questions tonight, please throw them out there, especially if you would like us to dial in anything else or provide more context. But some things for you, our revenues realistically estimated based on what you heard from staff, what you know about prior years. Our expenditures appropriate and necessary. Again, you may take out your pen and find that there are some things you'd like to question and move around a little bit. Are reserves sufficient? Remember, a lot of our reserves reduced because we significantly improved clarity about a lot of our capital outlays and our equipment costs that we didn't really know well previously. So with that in mind, do you think reserves are sufficient, or should we increase, decrease? Thoughts on that? Infrastructure needs, are we looking at that right? Are we thinking about community priorities? And are we positioning ourselves for long-term sustainability? I want to open it up for just counselor comments. Any last questions or comments or anything along these lines that you'd like us all to focus in on a little more?
I presume you mean committee member comments?
Yes, Marty can.
I just want to make sure our other on-council people were.
Well, how about this, TJ? I'm gonna flip the question. Do you feel that the budget you guys have put together here, that the revenues are realistically estimated?
So yeah,
Based on our, I'm sorry, go ahead, TJ.
no, and Donna, I mean, John's really jumping in at the same time because I think we both feel the same way. We definitely were very careful about estimating revenues in particular because we didn't want to overestimate and be under later on. So yes, and you know, to extend that, thank you for the flip and the logic there because I think it's helpful for you all to know what we think. We think expenditures are appropriate and necessary. We cut out a lot of stuff that wasn't necessary completely, and you're going to hear from Public Works next week, and maybe Mark will convince you to buy him a gate. I don't know. Our reserves sufficient? Again, I talked about how I believe that we were much more careful about actual costs for equipment and capital outlays. So I think it is sufficient, even though a lot of those reserve numbers are lower than what you've seen in prior years. In terms of infrastructure, I think that we are including that properly. A lot of that's going to come out of the SDC fund and the money that we're getting elsewhere, and a lot of the work that I'll be pointing all of my attention on after this budget. Does the budget reflect community priorities? I absolutely think so. We're not asking to raise, we're not even suggesting a raise of rates or a revisit of any of the other costs to the city. I think our number one priority as staff, and this was a directive really from the mayor as well as from council, is that you care about the community and you prioritize the community's well-being. We took that to heart, and I think that we did that in this budget. And in terms of long-term sustainability, I warned you all a little bit about some of these transfers that we're making from the general fund and how we have to think about some of our long-term sustainability as costs increase. But we know those problems. We're getting our arms around them. They're not new to us. And we've had a lot of meetings with a lot of folks to understand it. So I actually feel good about that, even though that could be improved. And I think it is improving. So those are my thoughts. Don, what are your thoughts?
I agree. As far as the infrastructure needs, I can't really speak to that. But we've definitely really dived into our revenues and expenditures and forecasted out through what we have currently, and what we can realistically estimate. Like, Councilor Myers had mentioned the property sales. That's not something we can realistically estimate, so we didn't include it. And we kind of erred on the side of caution for facility rentals and the park rentals. Based on previous years, we just haven't had a lot of them. We didn't want to over represent that on the budget. We might have more monies coming in, but I'd rather have a lower estimate and have more money come in rather than the opposite. Reserves are sufficient, to my knowledge, for what we have, and most of those are reserved for future use. Nothing's really being reserved for a specific purpose at this time. So I don't think that we need to do anything further with those. The budget does reflect the community priorities to our knowledge at this time. And then the long-term sustainability piece, Public Works is definitely one that we will have to review probably in the long run. But for this budget, we're making it work based on what we have, for both our revenues and needed expenditures. And a lot of those expenditures have been put off for quite some time. So we're doing what we can with the money we have to make it work.
Thanks, Don. And Councilor Felty, I appreciate the question.
I don't have a question, but I do want to say I really appreciate the work that everybody's put into this. I've sat on the budget committee for well over 20 years, and I've seen at least 2 times where the incomes were overestimated and the expenses were underestimated, and we had to go to the citizens with rate changes. So I really appreciate the work that you guys done on this.
Yeah, like I said, every expenditure on here has at least a 3% increase, at least.
So, I have a question. And I know that this is kind of a crystal ball question, but we keep hinting at the property tax increase. We've already got people talking about the $3 kilogram for the water bill.
So when we come to our capital improvement plan and unlocking those funds as far as what we can do for the water plant, do we potentially see that we're going to get enough grants and participation from outside resources, or are we going to have to go get another bond that is going to impact our citizens? You know, what is happening. And I realize it's a crystal ball because we don't have the engineering, we have no idea what the cost is, but I think before we start talking about property tax increases, we need answers to those questions. Because if we can improve the infrastructure, maybe we can get the growth, a little bit of growth that we need to get the additional property taxes, the additional revenue, funds for water uses and stuff. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Fred. I really appreciate the question. So first off, could we in the future potentially look at additional bonds to pay for infrastructure? That is possible, but it's not our first place to look for money. Our first place to be looking for money is, of course, in our SDCs and in the grant funds that are out there. And that's where I'll be spending a significant amount of my time. We also plan for these things. I don't anticipate significant or really any tax increases without a justification for doing so. Right now, we're at our maximum taxable allowance with the state. I think it's 3588. Don't quote me on that because it's not in front of me. But our total millage rate, we're maxed out in what we're legally allowed to receive. So if we actually did want to increase taxes, we'd have to justify why, and we'd have to bring it to the voters to increase. Those are discussions for much later on. My goal right now is to get these infrastructure projects to pencil out with as much money that already exists as possible. So Fred, I don't even want to go down that road about talking about fees or taxes or anything that's going to burden the citizens until we do our work first to figure out where the money is now that we can pay for those projects.
Yeah, it was just a bullet point you had in there, so that's just why I was asking.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's one of those things governments can do. Not trying to hint at it, though.
It's just been mentioned in the last 2 meetings. I just want to make sure it was, that was the purpose.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilor Ray?
So off of that, I was thinking about it beforehand, I was kind of curious on the bonds we have now, and you said some are coming up to where they're due. So, I think it would take too much to get a little less to get an idea how much when those are due. That would be for future, so that would help with future budget.
Yeah, I do actually have the specific dates in here. I know 2030 is the,
I mean, you don't have to do it now.
Oh, well, but I do have it in here. It was one of the, it was actually part of the original packet, because I spoke specifically about both the water revenue bond and the GO bond. About when they would be fully paid off. So let me see if I can't locate it very quickly here, and if not, I'll definitely mark them. Okay, yeah, so under, let's see what this is labeled in here. So our utility fund overview, and then we have our specific funds. So under here, though, we have our bond and debt obligation summary. So overall summary for 300 fund, which is our water revenue bond. That's the one that's $31.93 a year. So it's a 40-year loan. This is, let's see, end of 2025, 5/13/21 was paid. So this one's a little bit longer. Issued in 2008, so 2048. 2048, so that one will be paid.
That might be
So that might be that.
Yeah,
Another one.
yeah. So then right, but the 302 fund, so our water, our GO bond is the one that will be paid off in 2030. June 2030. So that one's nearing it in. And that's actually our higher payment too. We pay about $135,000 to $150,000 a year for that payment.
How much is that?
It's 4.5%. So it just, and of course, the
It's going
depreciation
down.
schedule, yeah.
Right.
Or the, you know, amortization schedule.
Okay.
So we got a little ways out.
At least on one of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
2040.
Yeah.
So we got a couple of them, short term, and then the rest of them.
I was just wondering if we have contingency at the end of the year, could we put like a couple extra thousand against it? And with my
Do an extra payment, and you know, that may be something you consider with the extra monies that we have in that reserve account for that final payment. That 24,000, you know, that's something that you could visit. All right, anything else?
I just wanted to chime in, going back to the slide that TJ is sharing here. So I know that we're taking a biennial budget, and basically so Don and TJ have had to take it and basically split it in half, take it apart, reanalyze it, look at everything with a magnifying glass.
Every line,
basically.
yeah.
So to answer your question, or the questions on this slide, I feel confident that we are with this budget where we need to be.
Actually, taking into consideration everything's gone up and it's continuing to go up, especially fuel.
You guys get excited on it.
I have a drawer.
Delayed days.
So we're gonna
We
meet next,
appreciate it, council. Thank you.
yeah, we're gonna meet next Monday then?
That is correct, the 8th, yes.
Yep, so we've got one more.
Yeah, I almost forgot about this, that's why.
So, and I just want to throw out there so everyone knows, if we have the extra budget meeting on the 15th, I will not be there. So no pressure, we need to get this done.
You can't finish it tonight?
We could. I don't know if we're ready though.
Mayor Sheets, I can mention really briefly, I think it might be a good idea, depending on where we sit after next week, might be a good idea to hold it just to discuss any button-up items, things you might want to get an update on the record. But I would say let's just plan to pass the budget on the same night as council night, which would be that following week. I think it's like the 20, whatever. It's late.
I should be back by then unless there's a delay in my travel.
I'm not available on the 15th either.
So there.
All right,
Okay. So,
If there's-
Kelsey gets to adjourn this.
Yeah, if there's no additional commentary or questions at this time. Going once, going twice. Gavel activate.
Thanks, everyone.
need to vote here.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, we'll touch base tomorrow, TJ.
That sounds great, Don. Thank you. Great job. Thank you.